I'm truly honored that you'd have me be your inaugural speaker. You know, when Kim and I were talking about what is it that I could share with you, there were a lot of things that immediately come to mind. And one of the things that we talked about, which is also something that the blurb on today's talk is about how do you create your own personal brand and how do you make sure that you're leading forward. But we're going to take a step back. Before we talk about the brand that we portray, we want to talk about the identity that we can create for ourselves. And what I'm hoping I do with you in this next hour is to share with you some concepts and frameworks that you may have been using implicitly all your life itself. So nothing that I'm going to share with you is going to come as a surprise to you, because the very fact that you're here today means that you already accomplished so much. It's my job to kind of help you think through what are the implicit concepts and guiding philosophy that you've used all your life, make it a little bit more explicit for you so that you can think a little bit more strategically at the end of the day to optimize rather than satisfy on creating your purpose. So I'm a strategy professor. I also teach innovation and entrepreneurship. So today what I'm going to do is talk about some of these concepts as they apply to you. So let me ask you one question before we start. What is the one product that you cannot live without today, such that if you don't have it with you, you will turn right around and get it? And I'm not talking about food or water, right? So what did you raise? A cell phone. How many of you would say a cell phone? Right? Now, you know, my kids may not remember this, but I remember, and I'm sure several of you remember, a time when cell phones weren't around. Right? So in the last 20 years, what is it that has made the cell phone such an indispensable part of our lives? Why is the cell phone so important to us? Instant connection, right? As human beings, we crave communication. We crave connections, yes? And a cell phone is our ability to stay in touch with people that we care to have in our lives, right? What else does the cell phone do for us? Yes? Keeps us organized. Keeps us organized, right? So it's not a gizmo for the sake of a gizmo. It is something that helps me at least maintain my schedule, right? So if I don't have my cell phone and my calendar in front of me, I'm lost. I don't know about you guys. I don't know where to go from one place to another. And let's talk about Waze, right, or Google Maps. That also keeps us going to the places that we want to go. What else does the cell phone do for us? Yes?
Creates memories, either notes I write down or photos I take. I like to have any of those.
Knowledge, right? You've got the world's knowledge on your fingertips because of the cell phone, right? I'm going to connect. So why am I talking about a cell phone when I'm saying I'm going to talk about fostering your own enterprise? I'll connect it. Just hang on with me. But let's talk about this concept of enterprise. You know, if you go to the dictionary meaning of enterprise, there are 3 definitions. Most of the time, we focus on this last definition. An enterprise is a unit of economic activity, a firm, or it's systematic, purposeful activity, right? That's how we think about in terms of enterprising organizations, entrepreneurship. However, I want to draw your attention to the first 2 definitions. Fostering enterprise is about undertaking a project that is especially difficult, complicated, or risky. Or the entrepreneurial spirit, the readiness to engage in daring and difficult action, as in showing great enterprise when dealing with a crisis. I want to talk about enterprise as it relates to the third, yes, but as the first 2 in particular, and as it relates to you. So going back to the cell phone, how many of you have an iPhone? The majority of you, okay. How many of you, I'll raise my hand, has a Google Android system? Okay. You have an iPhone?
Yes.
Right. So Rose and your?
Beth.
Beth. Beth, you have an Android.
I think, yeah.
Yes, right. Rose, would you switch? It's a smartphone.
No.
Why wouldn't you switch?
Well, we're a very Apple-focused family.
Ah. How many of you would not give away your droids? Okay. Why wouldn't you give away your Android for the Apple?
Because I'm familiar with it and
You're
I know where everything is.
You're familiar with it and you know where everything is. And Rose, that's probably what you would say too. Correct? So notice that even though these are two smartphones, which provide essentially the same function, right? Rose will not impart with hers, and I for sure am not going to give up my Android for an iPhone. I prefer my Android, right? Again, because of the comfort that I have with it. Who's the CEO of Apple? Cook. And before that, of course, it was Steve Jobs, right? When you're thinking about Apple as an enterprise and Tim Cook as its CEO, what do you think he's thinking about? What do CEOs think? What are some of the questions?
Ideas to keep me hooked onto my phone.
Okay, so you're saying, Chandra, it's an idea on how you can be stuck to your phone for as long as possible. And not trade it for an Android, right? Okay, so that's very important, right? How do I make sure that all of my iPhone users will buy the next iPhone? I guess there's 10 now, there might be 11, 12, whatever's coming. As soon as the next one is out, how am I going to make sure that I have them, right? So that's one question that Cook definitely thinks about. What else? Yes? How do I acquire a larger portion of the market? That's related to making sure that you have one consumer at a time, build in a lot of loyalty. What else?
What's next in technology?
What's next in technology? Why does he care about what's next in technology?
Because everybody wants the next, newer, best, greater.
Okay, so again, it's coming back to making sure that the consumers are hooked on, right? Anything else? Why does he care about consumers, by the way? The bottom line, which is making money. What does success look like, right? That's important for them, okay? What else might be important to Tim Cook?
Branching out, making other products that are similar.
Right, so continuing to stay relevant in as many products as possible. If you keep in mind the fact that Apple actually started as a PC maker, right? And then went into the iPod before it went into the iPhone. You can see how it's already branching out and being everything that they can be to a consumer. The reason I bring that up is because you are the CEO of a firm called My Enterprise, Me Incorporated. So I'm going to challenge you. Are you thinking like a CEO of yourself? How many of you believe that you know you're the CEO and you've got all of the questions answered, if not identified? None? Okay. By the end of today, by the end of today's session, what I'm hoping to do is have you start thinking about these. Okay? Now, Kim was gracious enough to pass around, but you don't need to worry about my slide set. We'll make that available to you at the end of it, so don't worry about having to take snapshots or take notes, right? The paper in front of you is so that we can talk about the 4 questions that I submit every CEO has to ask. And I'm going to ask you to be asking these questions of yourself, right? You've actually nailed one of the questions. It's the 3rd on my list. The first one is, what's my purpose or mission statement? The second is, what does success look like to me? The third, which is what you all were talking about, is, what's my value proposition? You're nodding your head? These make sense as questions you should be asking? And CEOs ask, yes?
Are these questions to ask of yourself in your professional life or your personal?
We'll come to that in just a second. Yes. And then the final one, with whom should I trade? I got a lot of whom's. Why was that? Why did you say to the fourth question and not to the first three?
That is the unknown territory.
That's
The other I can control if I choose to.
Okay. So let's hang on to this thought and figure out if this is truly unknown territory. How many of you were like, okay, I get the first three questions, Rajshree, but the fourth, I don't know what that means. How many of you felt that? Okay, let's go through, and if by the time we've answered the third question, you're still wondering about the fourth question, we'll have a conversation. Sounds good? Okay. Now, the question that was asked here, you asked, is how do I answer this question? What is my purpose or mission statement? Indeed, what I'm going to do, and this is what your pen and pad is in front of you, the piece of paper. I'd like you to go ahead and answer this question for yourself. Now, you may choose to make it about your professional life. You can choose to make it about your personal life, or you can choose to make it about your life as a whole. However way you want to answer it, write maybe in a sentence or two, what do you believe your purpose or mission statement is? So anyone want to share what they wrote as to what is their purpose or mission statement? Yes?
Mine is to create beauty and connect people.
To create beauty and connect people. Okay. Yes?
My purpose is to be a great mother, doctor, educator, and a good person and citizen.
Mother, doctor,
Educator.
educator, and citizen. I think she's covered it all.
I'll copy that. Trade with her now.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Yes?
Provide opportunities for myself and others to make an impact in the community.
To provide opportunities for others and yourself to make an impact on the community. Very good. What is the common theme across all of these mission statements? Yes? Relationships. Impact. Yes? No? Okay. Okay, I'll tell you what my mission statement is. I am deeply, deeply passionate about upward mobility. And I care about lifelong learning. Okay. What's Pat Stewart's mission statement? Who's Pat Stewart, Rajshree? She's my Pilates instructor. For Pat Stewart, her mission statement is to achieve health as a normal human condition. Right? Might resonate with many of you too. Notice that these mission statements are all about solving problems that are meaningful to you. In John Allison's words, John Allison was the former CEO and chairman of BB&T, which is now merging with SunTrust. He says, almost everybody, and for sure everybody in this room, the mission statement is about making the world a better place to live. But the thing that we often don't emphasize enough, and women in particular are very guilty of this, by the way, is the second part, by doing something important to yourself. Okay? So notice that when you said connecting beauty, connecting people and making it all beautiful, right? Or creating impact, or being the best mother, educator, doctor that you can be, you're thinking about making the world a better place to live, right? But why is it that you chose the medical profession? All of you. There were a lot of other places that you could have gone, right? A lot of other professions you could have chosen. Why did you choose this one?
To help the sick.
Pardon?
To help the sick.
To help the sick, and that's making the world a better place. But why? There are lots of ways in which you could be helping other people. Why did you choose to help the sick or to choose this particular profession? Kim?
I personally like the puzzle.
You like the puzzle.
Person in front of me.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes?
I like the human connection.
You like the human connection. So notice, in fact, that if I were to ask you to become a business professor, no, you guys are shaking your heads. It's a pretty cool gig. I promise you that, right? But you're saying, no, don't want to do that, right? Why? Because that's not personally important to you. Agreed? And notice that what happens. So I want to spend a little bit more time in asking you to develop your mission statement, right? I said I care deeply about upward mobility and lifelong learning, right? Right away, what could you identify about me? That I'm a college professor, right? Right? What about Pat Stewart? If I were to put both of these mission statements up, would you be able to identify whose was Pat Stewart's and whose was Rajshree's? You would, right? Because each of us are choosing to do something that is important to us as we're both making the world a better place. And by the way, how many of you rolled your eyes internally? Come on, be honest. When I put in make the world a better place to live. Yes? You did. Why did you roll your eyes at me?
Because I think to be practical, you have to take a bite-sized piece. You really can't eat the whole watermelon.
So for you, the part that you rolled your eyes about is, that's not practical, Rajshree, right? If I'm interested in making the whole world a better place, you've just paralyzed me. Because what is one person going to be able to do in order to make the world a better place? Yes? Pardon?
There's lots of things. Sometimes somebody writes a song and that makes the world a better place in a small way.
Beautiful. Let's come back to that in just a second, right? What is the other one reason why you may have rolled your eyes at me? Come on, be honest. It's cliched. And isn't it very presumptuous of you, Rajshree, to say you're making the world a better place? Yes? Right? Yeah? Okay, but you're saying, no, wait a minute, I'm going to push back. That's a good goal. Let me ask you this. Yes, go ahead.
The word better can be relative. Like what's better for one person may not be seen as better
By somebody else, right? So then, is better truly better, is what you're asking. But let me get back to this, how do you deal with this cliched, making the world a better place to live? How many of you remember Pokemon Go? Remember Pokemon Go? What was that? What was Pokemon Go all about? Yes?
It was, one, a game, but two, it ended up bringing a lot of people together that would never have conversed otherwise.
So let's talk about how they did that. But it's a game first, right? What was this game all about? People who don't know about Pokemon Go would like to know.
getting outside.
It,
Going somewhere else.
right. So the beauty of Pokemon Go was these Pokemon characters. You had this whole world GPSed so that it was in that smartphone. Remember we talked about how essential that smartphone is to us, right? The whole world was at your fingertips because no matter where you went, you knew where you were, right? And of course you were meeting people and you were going places. So for me, my world is the places I go, the people I meet, and the things that I do. That's my world. That's my sphere of influence. If I have made the world a better place by doing these three things well, then I made the world a better place. Yes? Now it doesn't seem intimidating, right? It is bite-sized. It's my bite of my world, right? And I am making a difference, which was your point, right? Singing a song brings a smile to someone's face, makes them happy, right? You've made a world a better place. And notice who's the one constant in your world. And if you're not happy, is your world a better place? Right? So here is where I'm going to challenge you to rethink, whether in the personal or professional life. You're already doing this, right? But think about the places you go, the things you do, and the people you meet. How are you making them better? And by the way, the reason why they're important to you is because these are three fundamental choices that you're making every time you do something. Right? It's a choice to be here today between 1 and 2. You don't need to show up. You chose to show up, right? It's a choice to hang around the people that make your world, personally or professionally. They bring you joy. They matter to you. What matters to them, as a result, matters to you. And the places you go to are also choices. So own those choices, because they're part of your mission statement, right? I had to work multiple times, by the way, to get my mission statement to being exactly where I wanted it to be, right? A mission statement is something that becomes your touchstone. It reminds you of your priorities, and it makes sure that you do not give up a higher priority for a lower priority. By the way, ask me about trying to manage, right? It's not because people ask me to do things, it's because I can't say no. How many of you feel the same way? Right? One of the things that I had to learn is when I say yes to everything, I'm actually not doing justice to the things that truly matter to me. So choices are a very important part of making sure that you deliver on your mission statement. So how do you go about doing that, right? So I'm going to parse out the two components of your mission statement, and bear with me as I'm giving you these concepts and frameworks, right? So the first part is actually about doing something important to yourself. And recreating that is question number 2. What does success look like to me? I'd like you to answer this taking a 5-year period horizon. In 5 years, if I have achieved this, then I can claim success. Why did I say 5 years? That's arbitrary. It could be 3 years, it could be 7 years, it could be 10 years. The idea is it should be far enough that you can work towards achieving that success goal. But it shouldn't be so far ahead that you cannot visualize it. By the way, a lot of people say, write your obituary. That's way too morbid for me, by the way, right? I want to live as long as I want to live, right? And the challenge is when you're writing your obituary and talking about, this is what I accomplished, if you will. That is too retrospective for me. I'd rather be prospective. So take a minute and think about your answer to what does success look like to me. So you are looking to be very, very successful in your department by making sure that you've created clinical documentation that is effective and helpful to others. Okay, that's specific. Anyone else? Yes?
I was surprised you made me think. So I put my first priority sending my kid to college.
Okay.
In 5 years.
Success is sending your kid to college. Fingers crossed, really.
I mean, that's the goal. I have to work for it.
I see. Send them to me, especially in the high school program that I've created, right? As rising juniors and seniors in high school, they can come to the Snyder Center for their SELF program, Snyder Enterprise and Leadership Fellows, for 2 weeks. It's the last 2 weeks of July. And I talk about these concepts because for kids, they're creating their own identity. This is something that's very important for them. Because you know what, parents? You might say this is what success is, this is what your kids are, right? Success is when your kids feel like they can be independent people that are capable of making sound choices by themselves, right? That's creating success for kids. And I help them achieve that. So what does success look like for me? It's about being able, so 5 years ago when I took on the directorship of the Ed Snyder Center, it was tabula rasa. There were no programs, there was no Snyder Center as such. So at that point is when I had defined success as being able to create programs for that lifelong learner, from high school all the way to non-degree exec ed. So the reason why I am here with you is because for me, if my mission is upward mobility, and particularly upward mobility of women. When Kim talked to me about what you guys are trying to achieve here, I said, I'd like to be there to talk to you about these concepts and frameworks that would help. Right? What does success look like to Pat Stewart? being able to point to clients whose health has improved because of sessions with her. Make sense? Notice how they connect very well. But here's a framework that might help you think about success. Do you guys remember the movie Martian? How many of you saw the movie? Okay, those of you who haven't, please, this evening, rent it. It is one of my all-time favorite movies, right? Now, what does success look like to Mark Watney in The Martian? Without giving out any spoilers for people that haven't seen it, right? The Martian, what's it about? Survival. Because, by the way, those of you who haven't seen The Martian, Mark Watney is strapped on Mars, stranded all by himself, in a hostile planet, no food, no air, no communication. And the tagline of this movie is, bring him home. So success is survival. Success is bringing him home. Now, that sounds morbid. Rajshree, you told me that you didn't like obituaries. Why are you talking about survival and death, right? Because this is one movie. The reason why I find it so inspiring is because this is one movie where everybody is working collaboratively with each other on the single mission of bringing him home. But that's not the reason why you should see the movie. You should see this movie because, I kid you not, within 5 minutes of watching this movie, as my kids would say, you'd be laughing your ass off. Right? Because he's got the sense of life, this very positive can-do attitude, and problem solving, which is what the mission is all about, right? Solving problems that are meaningful to you. Nothing more meaningful than getting home and not being able to live a life. There's one point in this movie, though. Every time he's got this positive can-do attitude, but one time that he gives up hope. And he says to the captain of the ship, I'm giving a little bit of a spoiler here. He believes he's not going to make it. So he says this message, please tell my parents, 30-something young guy, unmarried, communicating what he believes is his final message to his parents. What would you say? Tell my parents. Tell my parents I love what I do and I'm good at it. And I'll be dying for something bigger and much more than myself. Tell them I can live with that. Being able to say, I love what I do. How many of you say that? I love what I do. Okay. At the same time, I'm good at it. Not as many hands went up. Right? Success is being able to say both of them at the same time. And often, and this is another thing that I've noticed across men and women, we tend to be able to much more easily say, I love what I do, than are able to say, I'm good at it, even though we're very good at it. Right? So ask yourself what's stopping you from saying, I'm good at it. Okay. Now, here's a way that I would help you with dealing with this. And this is my first matrix, what I call an ability and aspiration matrix. Ability is what you're good at. Aspiration is what you love. Right? So right there, my 2x2, right? You can think about what you're not good at versus what you're really good at. What you hate and what you love. Agreed? You don't want to be here. That's the quadrant I call misery. Not being good at something that you hate. Agree? That ain't success. Yes? If you love what you do, but you're not very good at it, that's what I call a hobby. By the way, the term hobby comes from the term hobby horse, a pony at a fair that's going round and round but not really accomplishing anything. Right? By the way, I love volleyball. I suck at it, really. I'm good at backyard games, but that's all that I am. So if that's what I chose for my career, I'd be really, really bad. Not the least because I'm only 5'4". I say 5'4 and a half, My kids tell me, no, you're 5'3½", not 5'4", right? If you're good at something, but you don't love it, that's just another job. So where you want to be is the sense that it's a calling. I love what I do, and I'm good at it. Right? And notice what happens. If you're good at something, it gives you a sense of self-esteem. And when you get a sense of self-esteem from doing something, you start loving it. And when you love something, you want to invest in it to become even better. So you create this virtuous spiral inside yourself. And that's what makes it a calling. Right? So what I would love for you to do is take this matrix and think about all of the component aspects of your job. Okay? When you start off, remember success is a 5-year, and of course keep your mission in mind. Right? Success is a 5-year outcome in the future. Right now, it's okay if all of the things that you're doing are all over all 4 cells of the quadrant. Does that make sense? Right? But what you want to do is start thinking about how do you move as much of your activities to what you're good at and what you love. Right? That makes sense? But also start identifying things that you hate and things that you're not good at. So your activity should move either to the right and up or to the left and down. Let me give you a very quick example of a practical thing that happened 5 years ago when I was developing this framework. My husband happens to be a mechanic in his earlier life. I say he tinkers in the garage. I've been told by other people after they've listened to me, that's not tinkering, Rajshree, that's heavy duty, working on a car, right? So he had this Ford Bronco that my kids bought for him as a Father's Day present, right? When they bought it for him, it was a junky, dirty, rusty, really bad-looking 1976 Bronco. Now it is a bright coral orange V8 engine, yay-high tires, right, that he goes four-wheeling in. Well, 5 years ago, my younger daughter decided that it would be really, really good if she built something with her father that they could go four-wheeling together in, right? But she wanted a Jeep, and Rob didn't know much about Jeeps because he was a Ford man. So he was very confused. He says, I don't even know, for every one Ford Bronco that I can buy used, there are at least 100 Jeeps that I can buy. So what do? So I kid you not, I took this matrix out and I said, Rob, let's work through this, right? So this is a project, a hobby, if you will, right? So what we did is we broke down the activities. So I asked him, I said, what do you love doing? He said, well, I used to love working on electrical stuff, and I'm very, very good with engines. And I said, what don't you like? Or what are you not good at? He says, I hate welding, and I can't paint for the life of me. So what do you think he got as a Jeep, as a summer project? Yeah, a Jeep Wrangler, yeah, but what do you think the Jeep was like?
Something that looked good and didn't need a lot of body work, but maybe just was messed up electrical and engine-wise.
Precisely, right? So he bought a really, really great body, nice white paint, missing engine, blown up transmission, right? Now, the thing of the matter is, remember I said success in 5 years? This was supposed to be a summer project. He's just getting there, finishing it up, right? But the larger point is that we were able to take a task and break it up into activities, right? And identify things that he didn't like and hated doing were just as important for him to identify as things that he loved doing and was good at. Yes? Okay. What is my value proposition? Question number 3. This is about making the world a better place. Right? By the way, any questions on what the term value proposition means? Right? Go back to the English language, right? Value proposition, what value do I propose to you? So go ahead. What is your value proposition? Can I give you an example?
Yes.
Okay. So my value proposition is my ability to integrate research, teaching, and engagement to create brand new novel programs for the lifelong learner. Pat Stewart's value proposition is to combine her deep empathy for her clients with her wide expertise on Pilates to create customized sessions for each client every day. Is that helpful?
Very, yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, so let me go through and help out, and then maybe we can come back and revisit this issue, right? The quote that I have for you here is from Steve Jobs. I don't think it's good that we're perceived as different. I think it's important that we're perceived as much better. If being different is essential to being better, then we have to do that. What is he saying here? Why is he making such a big deal between being different versus being better? So being different is a fact of life, right? We're all different from each other, correct? When we're thinking about the value proposition, we're not necessarily just focusing on the uniqueness of our differences or the features that we each have. We're thinking about the benefits that these features have. So notice that in my value proposition, I was very clear about, first and foremost, the uniqueness of my features. There are a lot of business school professors, very good ones. I'm really good at what I do because I can integrate all three. And that's my unique ability. But my unique ability doesn't matter much to my consumer if it is not clear as to what is the benefit to them, right? So in my value proposition, I was very clear to define both my unique features and the value it offered. Similar to Pat Stewart's too, right? What were her unique features? Deep empathy and wide expertise, right? How did it benefit the other person, the value proposition to her customer? The customization of each and every session. So much so that if I can't go to Pat, I don't go to Pilates at all, which kind of defeats the purpose. But that's how good she is, right? So here's my next feature benefit matrix. You're still looking at your abilities on the x-axis, similar to what we had in the first matrix. Now here you're focusing not only on whether your abilities are good, but also how unique they are relative to the other person who may be able to provide the same kind of features, right? And on the y-axis, instead of thinking about whether you love doing it or whether it's important to you, you're now focusing on how does it benefit the other person, right? This relates to making the world a better place, that part of your mission statement, right? So again, the first quadrant, you're not unique, you don't provide value, that's undistinguished and unemployed. Obviously, none of us are in that position right now, right? I used to say sleeping in your parents' basement until my then administrative assistant says to me, Rajshree, I am not undistinguished and unemployed. I happen to be sleeping in my parents' basement because I'm saving to buy my own house. I said, point well taken. So I changed it in honor of her to undistinguished and unemployed. Okay. If you're providing value, but you're not unique, you're cogs in a wheel, easily replaceable, right? If you're unique, but you're not providing value, that's when I say you're the bell prince of your ball, but nobody's coming to your party, right? So again, where you want to be is the sense of being indispensable. I cannot even imagine doing this without you by my side. If someone says that to you, that's indispensable. Right? As an example, one of my executive MBA cohorts, when I was explaining and going through these concepts, she was working for a bank. And she realized that there were two key components of her job. Business development, so that she could identify new clients and get their business. And then underwriting the loans, so that it would go through. What she discovered about herself is the fact that she was extremely good at business development. And in fact, not only was she unique there, that was what was the highest value creation that she could offer for her employer. The underwriting, she was able to train a subordinate to take care of and do. Right? So notice again what she did, if these are the two components of doing her job well, she was able to parse it out and say, for me, underwriting is not unique, nor is it providing much value at my stage of my career, right? When I started off, that was a good place for me to be, underwriting too. But now I can hire and train a subordinate to do that for me, right? But what I should be focusing on is honing my ability to do business development. So one of the things that I often say to people as they're thinking about developing themselves, and this is true, by the way, have you ever had performance feedback? You're giving or receiving it? Yes? Right? Now, it could be the case that you have heard 98% good things. What will you remember when you walk out the door? Usually, the negative, right? And by the way, we women are very guilty of that, right? We always obsess about what it is that we're not good at, right? Because we want to be perfect at everything. At least that's the way I am, and I have a sense that all of you are nodding your heads as to where that's where you are too. What's the cost of trying to be perfect at everything? Never mind the stress, never mind the sleepless nights. You're working on the bad stuff at the expense of honing the good stuff, right? So I often say, again, this comes back to the prioritization. Figure out what are your points of parity and your points of difference. Points of parity, you should focus on only achieving a threshold level at. Make sure that those, that's like good hygiene. Right? You want to have somebody sitting next to you. Yeah? Rose is looking at the other person like, no, I don't smell. No, I don't do that. Right? So you want to make sure that you're at that point of parity. But anything more than that is not providing you value. But any time that you spend on doing that is costing you on honing your better abilities. Right? And you also want to do it in light of the environment you're in. What is it that's creating a higher value proposition to your consumer, right? And if you're not able to deliver on that, you've got two options. Either you change yourself or you change your consumer. Make sense? Right? But you have choices there. One of the things I often say to people, I had a friend, a very dear friend of mine, was very clear that she wasn't very good at doing research. But not only was she feeling now, in terms of her, I'm not good at it, nor do I love it, she was also feeling down and beaten about that. And I had this honest conversation with her where I reframed it for her. I said, before you ask whether you're good enough for research, ask the question, is research good enough for you? Right? Because it's a matter of fit. So if you feel like you're in a place where the things that are uniquely good about you, what you love doing, are not providing high value to your focal consumer, then maybe you should change your consumer. That's an option that you have, right? But the larger point that I'm hoping to leave you with is that you want to focus on identifying, again, two types, right? Either focus on what you are not unique at and are not providing much value, so that you know that's not the things that you're going to do, and then focus on what you're good at. So again, you want to hone and spend all of your time on getting into that indispensable quadrant for yourself. Does that make sense? And hopefully, the activities that are in your indispensable quadrant are also in your calling quadrant. Because then you've really aligned both your value proposition and what success looks like. Yes?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you know what your strengths are, you know what you're good at, and your consumers also, say for example, our consumers are the patients.
Yes.
But then you measure success by what the leadership and the, not society, I'm going to say the organizational bodies,
Yes.
the leadership position, so they give equal value to these other quadrants, for example, research.
Yes.
And I know it's not my strength.
Yes.
I know I suck at it.
That's
and
right.
That's
That's
just,
right.
I know it.
Yes.
And I'm really clear about it.
Yes.
But the fact is, success that the governing bodies measure is, how do I do this also? Because they want you to be the super person who's good in everything, and you cannot be that.
That's right.
The problem is you get dinged because
Yes.
you're not good in there. How do you equate that?
So this was a conversation we were having over lunch, precisely on this point, right? This is exactly why an initiative like WIMS is so important. Because movements are about changing the environment around you. And that is exactly where you all coming together and identifying the fact that giving patient care in medicine, come on, is that not a high value proposition? So maybe this is where you now start to focus on changing the consumer's perception of what is high value. And that is a worthwhile effort because it also is enabling you to feel like not only are you truly adding value, which you know you are, but you're also loving what you do and you're good at it, right? So sometimes, again, this is a start of a conversation, I hope, right? And I'll be happy to come back again and give you concrete strategies of what are the, to your point, this is not just about the opportunities in your environment, but the threats, as in you don't feel like things that ought to be valued are being valued. And then you have your strengths and weaknesses too. So we can talk in a future session on what we can do to create strategies based on your opportunities and threats and strengths and weaknesses, right? Okay. So the final, and I know that I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to respect. I know that we are up to 2:30, but some of you have to leave at 2, right? So let me just finish up with this last question. Does it make sense now? With whom do I trade? Because implicitly, that was what I was talking about, right? Remember, Rob traded when he was deciding what kind of Jeep to buy, right? Carolyn traded when she was deciding that she was going to focus on business development and have somebody else focus on the things that she didn't think was uniquely her value proposition, right? So with whom should you trade? I choose to trade with people that are complementary in skills, but aligned in values to me. People that I can create win-win relationships. So notice implicitly I was talking to you about a trade between Pat Stewart and myself, where each of us are doing things that we love, we're good at, and provide a unique value proposition to the other. Pat may not care about my business professor skills, but then at least with those skills, I can make the money so I can pay her, right? So it doesn't have to be a one-to-one trade with each person. We can have trade across multiple people, right? The trader principle is the one that I live by. Not because I'm an economist, but because this is the principle that truly preserves human dignity. A trader does not treat men as masters or slaves, but as independent equals. He deals with men by means of free, voluntary exchange, an exchange which benefits both parties by their own independent judgment. Notice, and I say this to my PhD students too, by the way, when they come looking for advice from me. I say, when we're embarking on a new project together, you have to think about both of us as independent equals. What do you mean? I'm not your equal, Rajshree. No, you are. Because I may know more about what's already known. But if we're embarking on a new research project, then we both don't know what is to be known. Coming to the table as an independent equal in that sense implies that you have to maintain your curiosity and your questioning mind. And if you come to me and I'm questioning you about something that you have as an idea, and as soon as I question you, you say, oh, Rajshree said this, she must be right, I'm wrong, you're making an assumption. You're silencing yourself. Paradoxically, when you silence yourself, you silence me. Because I know that you're not going to think in a way that you should if I challenge you, so I'm not going to challenge you as much. So what gets lost is the idea itself. That's how I mean independent equal, right? So voluntary relationships bring together the two parts of your mission. Benefit to you, doing something that's important to you, what you love, and benefit to the other, making the world a better place. If there's no benefit to you or the other, that's a lose-lose. If you're either in a lose-win or a win-lose, what happens? You're going to break up. So lose-win or win-lose is going to end up being a lose-lose. It's not sustainable. So as opposed to all of the other matrices where I was telling you to focus on both diagonal quadrants, here there's only one. You have to make sure that it's a win-win. Right? So, answers to those 4 questions that we started off with. What's your mission? Making the world a better place by doing something important to yourself. What does success look like? Loving what you do and being good at it. What's your value proposition? Creating unique features that provide value in trade. And with whom should you trade? You should seek win-win relationships because it's collaboration, not competition. That is the hallmark of trade. And when I'm talking about trade, I'm not talking about transactions. I'm talking about relationships. And relationships are something that we women in particular are really, really good at. So start thinking of trade, of what you do as relationship building. And you have reframed it to your advantage. So what does this mean for the organization? You asked me this question. Yeah, I get it. I'm providing value to the consumer. I'm doing what I love. But what about my organization? Right? What is an organization? They're made up of individuals. At the end of the day, each of us have different goals, different skills, and different beliefs. What an organization does is unify these differences through a common purpose, and achieves it by ensuring that each and every one of us specializes in what we're good at, then coordinates across all of us to make sure that all of the complementary skills are going together, and also creates governance, right? Rules and incentives that bring everybody together. So, going along with the notion of trade, have you guys played Trade or Sudoku? A Sudoku? A Sudoku. Forget about Trade or Sudoku. What's a Sudoku?
Boxes. There's 1 through 9.
9 boxes.
1 through 9, and then
Right. So 9 boxes that make up a big box, and you have to get 1 through 9. None of them can repeat themselves, right? Yes? The next time you're on a plane, instead of playing a Sudoku, think about dreaming up your Trader Sudoku. What's a Trader Sudoku? There's a me. There's a you. There's a choice among who are the yous that you choose to associate with. Who are the yous you want to keep in your life? And we think about trade as a transaction. What am I doing? What are you doing? Right now, we're engaged in a trade, right? And we can think about it in a very transactional sense. But notice that underlying each of our actions, what am I doing? What are you doing? Are, what is our common objective? What is binding all of us together? And this common objective is taking into account my aspirations, your aspirations, my abilities, your abilities. 9 boxes. The next time you want to think about doing something enterprising, start with what is dreaming? What is it that you would like to accomplish? Kim, that's how you started. And the entire Women's Executive Council for WIM started. What is it that we're trying to accomplish together? Who are the me's and the U1, U2, U3, U4? Unifying all of them is the common objective. Each of us can bring complementary capabilities and decide on actions individually. But they all have to answer to our own individual personal mission and aspiration. Right? So key takeaways. We can foster our entrepreneurial spirit by creating a virtuous spiral between our aspirations and our abilities, optimizing on our feature benefits, and creating win-win outcomes in trade. Seek to align purpose with people you trade with, both in the organizations that you associate with and in society at large. Because if you don't seek win-win relationships, you'll definitely end up in lose-lose. 2 quotes that I find very inspiring. As an endowed professor, I'm often considered learned. This quote reminds me that in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. The minute I think of myself as a learned, not a learner, I have signed that death certificate that I don't want to be looking at writing my obituary. The other one is also deeply resonant with me. We're often told that talent creates its own opportunities, but it sometimes feels that intense desire creates not only its own opportunities, but also its own talents. Thank you so much for being with me.